Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Ivanza Kenji Sakkay from class 33.7A.07, name 33.20201. I'm here to present my project UAS Cross-Cultural Understanding. Part 1, Oral Presentation. Topic 1, Cultural Shock. Definition. According to Ward, Bochner, and Fernham from 2001, culture shock refers to a set of emotional, psychological, and behavioral reactions experienced when individuals are exposed to an unfair cultural environment. They emphasize that culture shock is not a single moment but a process of adjustment involving stress, confusion, and gradual adaptation. Additional theoretical perspective. Joel Gina Snape, Stopping, and Todman from 2008 explain that cultural shock is part of a broader adaptation process, especially among international students. They describe it as a dynamic interaction between the individual, the host culture, and academic and social demands. Stages of cultural shock. Cultural shock usually develops in stages rather than happening all at once. According to Ward, Bochner, and Fernham 2008 and supported by Brown and Holloway from 2008, individuals often experience the following stages. The honeymoon stages, which is excitement, curiosity, fascination with the new culture. The crisis stage, which is feels about anxiety, frustration, homesickness, misunderstanding, and for the recovery stage, learning cultural norms and improving communication. Adjustment stage is about comfort, acceptance, and cultural competence. Brown and Holloway from 2008 specifically highlight the initial excitement can quickly turn into a culture shock, especially among international students. Uh, Example 1, international student experience. The situation an Indonesian student studies at a university in the UK. At the first, the student feels excited about independent learning, new academic environment. However, after several weeks, the student experiences difficulty understanding classroom interaction, feeling isolated due to different communication styles, stress for unfamiliar academic expectations. Why this is a culture shock? This example aligns with Ward, Bochner, and Fernham from 2001, stated that academic and social stress are major components of culture shocks. It reflects emotional stress, academic and social adjustment difficulties, and that crisis stage of cultural shock. Example 2, the early sojourn experience. The situation. A student joining an international exchange program initially feels happy and enthusiastic. However, after the first month, the student feels lonely, misses home culture, and becomes frustrated with local social norms. Why this is a cultural shock? According to Broad and Holloway from 2008, the early stage of international sojourn is often emotionally unstable. The initial excitement may mask deeper cultural stress. They explain that excitement in the early stage can quickly shift into shock when cultural differences becomes challenging. So in conclusion, cultural shock is a normal psychological response to entering a new culture. It involves emotional stress, identity confusion, and communication challenges. Understanding cultural shock helps individuals adapt more effectively and communicate across cultures. As emphasized by the theoretical resources, cultural shock is not a failure but a natural part of intercultural adaptation. And here's the references. And the next topic is a non-verbal communication. The definition. Nonverbal communication refers to the transmission of messages through facial expressions, gestures, body movement, appearance, and other visual or behavior cues rather than spoken language. McDuff, Girard, and Calliope from 2017 demonstrate that facial behaviors varies significantly across cultures, highlighting the cultural nature of nonverbal communication. Key forms of nonverbal communication. Based on recent interdisciplinary research, nonverbal communication can be categorized into several key forms. A. Facial expressions. Dowell, Miller, and uh, Hochberg and Ford from 2022 explain that facial expressions are one of the most widely studied on nonverbal signals in psychological research. They emphasize that facial cues are essential for emotion recognition, social judgment, interpersonal understanding. However, interpretation of facial expressions may vary across cultures. B. Gestures and sign language. According to Green, Hodge, and Kelly from 2022, gestures and sign languages function as structured nonverbal systems that convey meaning through hand movements and body positioning. They highlight that gestures are culturally grounded, socially learned, context dependent. C. Appearance and dress. Sklar, Strubel, Freeberg, and Elhab Bassi from 2022 argue that dress and style are powerful nonverbal signals that communicate identity, social belonging, and cultural values. They emphasize that clothing functions as a symbolic form of communications, especially in social and cultural contexts. Now, the examples. Example 1. Facial expressions across cultures. The situation explains that students from Indonesia interacts with a lecturer from a Western country. The lecturer interprets the student's illuminated facial expressiveness as a lack of interest, while the student is actually being respectful. Why this is nonverbal communication? This example involves facial expression as a nonverbal cue and cultural differences in emotional display. This example reflects the findings of McDuff, Girard, and Calliope from 2017, who found large-scale evidence of cross-cultural variation in facial behavior. Example 2. Clothing as nonverbal communication. The situation explains a university student wears a traditional clothing during a cultural event, whereas speaking others immediately recognize cultural background, identity, and group affiliation. Why this is nonverbal communication? This example shows that meaning is conveyed visually and dress communicates social identity. According to Strubel, Freiberg, and El Habassi from 2022, dress functions as a nonverbal language that communicates cultural meaning and social positioning. In conclusion, that transmit meaning beyond spoken language includes facial expressions, gestures, and appearances. Varies across cultural contexts. Understanding nonverbal communication helps individuals communicate more effectively and respectfully in intercultural interactions. And here's the references for topic 2. The next part is case studies. Case study A. A stereotype of Chinese Indonesians. The situation explains in many communities that there is a common stereotype that Chinese people are naturally good at mathematics, business, and are likely to own shops or run commercial activities. However, this stereotype does not always reflect reality. In this case, Sensen, who became Sensen, who comes from a Chinese Indonesian family, struggles with numbers and does not excel in mathematics. She also has no interest in business and does not plan to own a shop. Despite this, people around her often assume she should be good at counting or managing money simply because of her ethnic background. 1. What type of stereotype is presented in this case? The stereotype presented in Sensen's case is a positive stereotype. The assumption that all Chinese Indonesians are naturally good at mathematics, business, and finance. Although it seems positive on the surface, it's still a form of cultural generalization that limits individual identity and potential. According to Pertwee from 2016, this belief reflects the model minority stereotype, where a minority group is perceived as successful, intelligent, and economically capable simply because of ethnic background. This stereotype assumes uniform ability within the group and ignores personal differences, leading to unrealistic expectations. And two, what are the negative impacts of these stereotypes on Sensen? The stereotype negatively impacts Sensen in several ways. Emotionally, Sensen feels anxious, ashamed, or inferior because she cannot meet others' expectations. Socially, peers may judge her as not a real Chinese Indonesian or exclude her for not fitting the stereotype. Academically, the pressure to excel in math can create stress or reduce motivation, a phenomenon known as a stereotype trait. Culturally, she may feel alienated from both her ethnic identity and wider Indonesian society. Walujuno from 2014 found that stereotypes of Chinese Indonesians as business-oriented and financially adept often lead to identified conflict and emotional exhaustion among individuals who do not conform to these social norms. The assumption that all members of an ethnic group share the same talents can cause psychological harm and feelings of inadequacy. 3. Are there any positive impacts of these stereotypes? Some might argue that being stereotyped as intelligent or hardworking brings social prestige or trust in business or education. However, the overall impact remains negative because it imposes social pressure and psychological strain. Youth and Culture from 2024 explained that even so-called positive stereotypes contribute to talent and intergroup tension. While the stereotype can make Chinese Indonesians appear successful, it also creates resentment among other groups and dehumanize individuals who do not fit the image. For Sensen, this means that instead of being valued for who she is seen through a narrow cultural lens. 4. What specific stereotype is highlighted in this case? The specific stereotype highlighted is the model minority stereotype. The idea that Chinese Indonesians are inherently intelligent, disciplined, and business-minded. This stereotype has deep historical roots, reflecting how society views Chinese Indonesians as an economically strong and academically capable minority group. Kunjara and Hun from 2020 found that this stereotype continues to shape how Chinese Indonesians are perceived even after Indonesia's political reform era. People often assume that all Chinese Indonesians are successful business owners or mathematically gifted, ignoring their diverse interests and identities. Sensen's experience illustrates how such assumptions distorts personal perception and creates social pressure. And here's the references. Case Study B. Summary of Wilking's presentation. The presentation by Wilking, titled Beyond Language Barrier, Communication and Collaboration Across Culture, explores how linguistics proficiency alone is insufficient for effective intercultural communication. The core argument emphasizes that true understanding arises from recognizing and interpreting the cultural meanings embedded in language use, tone, and nonverbal behavior. Through a workplace case study at Speakwise, King and his colleagues R. Fox illustrate how cultural misinterpretations occur even among fluent English speakers. A British manager's direct feedback intended as constructive was perceived by Indonesian colleagues as harsh and confrontational. This incident highlighted the contrast between direct communication styles, valuing clarity and debate, and indirect styles, valuing harmony and politeness. The misalignment of these cultural norms led to emotional discomfort and reduced team participation. In response, Speakwise adopted a new communication framework centered on start with strengths, suggest improvement, invite input, and check understanding. This approach enhanced collaboration, creativity, and confidence among multicultural teams. The presentation further compares how identical phrases or gestures can convey divergent meanings between British and Indonesian contexts, demonstrating that culture, not language, determines interpretation. King also extended the discussion to literature, asserting that authors such as Shakespeare, Pramoedya, Ananta Tuer, and Chinua Achebe, Achebe embed cultural communication patterns, hierarchy, dignity, identity within their works. Hence, comprehension requires cultural literacy beyond textual analysis. The session concludes by reinforcing that effective intercultural communication depends on empathy, cultural awareness, and reflective practice. King advocates for small but deliberate strategies, clarifying intent, summarizing agreement, and engaging in respectful dialogue as tools to minimize misunderstanding. Ultimately, he asserts that language builds connection, culture builds understanding, and together they foster global collaboration and peace. Case Study C: Body Language Misunderstanding. The situation explains Amran and Indonesian students feel confused when an American friend greets him by raising a hand with a finger spread open. In Indonesia, this gesture is commonly understood as a signal to stop. However, in the United States, the same gesture is often used as a casual way to say hello or wave. This misunderstanding makes Amran unsure how to respond, and he begins to feel uncomfortable in social interactions. He worries that he might appear rude if he reacts the wrong way, or that he might misinterpret other gestures in the future. 1. How does this situation show body language can lead to culture shock? Amrat's confusion demonstrates how body language can trigger culture shock when familiar gestures carry different meanings across cultures. In Indonesia, raising a hand with fingers spread open typically means stop, while in the US it's a casual greeting. Because Amrat interprets as the gesture through his own cultural lens, he feels confused and anxious about how to respond. As Alexander 2025 explains, nonverbal signals often carry emotional and contextual meanings that vary greatly between cultures, making them prone to misinterpretation during intercultural encounters. Such misunderstandings can disrupt smooth communication and cause psychological discomfort, a common symptom of culture shock. 2. What cultural factors influence the meaning of body language in this case? The meaning of gestures, facial expressions, and posture is deeply rooted in cultural norms and social learning. In Amran's case, his Indonesian background teaches that an open palm indicates to command or warning, while American culture associates it with friendliness. According to Kaushal from 2016, the same gesture may have contradictory meanings across cultures, depending on local customs, traditions, and shared understanding. Cultural conditioning shapes how people decode non-verbal messages, and what seems polite in one culture may appear rude or strange in another. Thus, Amran's confusion arises from differing cultural symbol systems that influence body language interpretation. 3. What negative effects might this misunderstanding have on Amran's interaction with others? Misinterpreting nonverbal signals can cause emotional stress, social hesitation, and fear of further mistakes. Amran's discomfort might lead to reduced confidence in interacting with foreigners, or even avoidance of social situations involving cultural diversity. As Hindra from 2017 emphasizes, intercultural misunderstandings can result in communication breakdowns that foster anxiety, embarrassment, and uncertainty. Such emotional responses often hinder individuals from adapting or engaging openly, leading to isolation and weakened cross-cultural relationships. For Amran, this means struggling to connect with peers and fearing unintended rudeness. 4. What problem-solving strategies can help Amran handle this situation? Hinder from 2017 suggests effective strategies such as observing and mirroring local gestures before using them, asking clarifying questions when unsure about a gesture meaning, learning common nonverbal norms through interaction or cultural orientation, and building tolerance and empathy for ambiguity in intercultural communication. Likewise, Kaushal from 2016 notes that understanding and respecting nonverbal differences enhances cross-cultural competence and reduces future miscommunication. By adopting these strategies, Amran can gradually become more confident and avoid misinterpreting friendly gestures as negative ones. And here's the references. And that's for my presentation for this project, and I apologize if there's any my mistakes. Thank you for watching. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.